Hello everyone, welcome to Broadview. My name is Joseph. In 2013, a newly declassified CIA report officially acknowledged for the first time ever the existence of Area 51. Previously, the US government's been denying Area 51's existence. The report didn't mention any aliens or UFOs being kept at Area 51, but as you'd imagine, extraterrestrial fans still got super excited about it. Few people noticed that in the same year, the CIA reevaluated a book that got banned for 50 years. 3 years later, in 2016, the CIA disclosed a declassified version of the book on its official website. Originally, the book had 286 pages, but only 57 pages were revealed to the public. It means most of the content had been removed. What does the book tell us? Why has it attracted so much attention from the CIA, and what secrets are hidden inside? Today, let's talk about this banned book that's been hidden by the CIA for 50 years. Chan Thomas is the author of the Adam and Eve story. The book was published in 1965, but the CIA banned it only a year later. 27 years later, in 1993, Chan Thomas published a revised edition with the same title. The new edition only had 240 pages, 46 pages short compared to the original book banned by the CIA. Many people guessed that the published edition got censored. The information that the CIA didn't want the public to know about got removed. Strangely, we can hardly find any information on Chan Thomas, other than a photo and a brief intro in the book. As a result, many people question whether Chan Thomas was his real name. Others say that the CIA classified all information about Chan Thomas. In any case, the book describes the author as follows. Chan Thomas attended Dartmouth College and Columbia University. He had studied geology, vertebrates, paleontology, oceanography, glaciology, seismology, anthropology, and other fields in depth. Later, he began to specialize in catastrophism. Catastrophism is the opposite of uniformitarianism and gradualism. These theories believe that the history of the Earth is long and gradual. Drastic changes don't happen suddenly. They happen through a slow and evolutionary process. This is also consistent with the theory of evolution, which states that the birth of any species is not random or sudden. On the contrary, catastrophism theorizes that there have been many sudden and major catastrophic events on Earth. After each catastrophe, the original living beings were destroyed and replaced by new life forms. French geologist and paleontologist Georges Cuvier first proposed this theory in 1821. He was also the first to suggest that in prehistoric times, the Earth had been dominated by reptiles rather than mammals. He was an anti-evolutionist, arguing that evolution was a hypothesis with insufficient evidence. Rather, he believed in cyclical creations and destructions of life forms through global extinction events. Chan Thomas's book, The Adam and Eve Story, was written based on his 20 years of interdisciplinary research. The title misleads the readers into believing that it's a book about the Bible or Christianity. But Chan Thomas actually explains the fall of prehistoric civilizations and the origin of humanity from a completely new perspective. He argues that periodic geological catastrophes are like a switch that restarts human civilization. The civilization is destroyed and then redeveloped over and over again. The book describes the scene when the catastrophe comes. With a rumble as low as to be inaudible, growing, throbbing, then fuming into a thundering roar, the earthquake starts. In California, the mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. The mighty Pacific roars back and piles up into a mountain of water more than 2 miles high, then starts its race eastward. The unbelievable mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind eastward, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco as if they were grains of sand. Across the continent, the 1,000-mile-per-hour wind wreaks its unholy vengeance everywhere, mercilessly and unceasingly. In a fraction of a day, all vestiges of civilization are gone, and the great cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, are nothing but legends. Europe cannot escape the onslaught. The raging Atlantic piles higher and higher upon itself, following the screeching wind eastward. Western Africa and the sands of the Sahara vanish in nature's wrath, under savage attack by wind and ocean. As the Arctic basin leaves its polar home, eastern Siberia, Manchuria, China, and Burma are subjected to the same annihilation as South America. Wind, earth, fire, inundation, and freezing. Not man, nor beast, nor plant, nor earth is left unfrozen in the entire eastern Asian continent, most of which remains below sea level. The fury of wind and inundation marches on for 6 days and nights. During the 6th day, the oceans start to settle in their new homes, running off the high grounds. On the 7th day, the horrendous rampage is over. The Arctic Ice Age is ended, and a new Stone Age begins. Now, if I didn't say so, you might think that this is some kind of Hollywood disaster blockbuster. But Chan Thomas says his book belongs to the genre of nonfiction, and that what he describes is exactly what we will have to face when the next disaster comes. He believes that the cause of this geological disaster is the viscosity of the Earth's crust causing rapid continental drift. Crustal drift is not the same as magnetic pole reversal of the Earth. It is not an intangible change in the magnetic field, but rather a shift in the Earth's crust. Some people may be unfamiliar with the term crustal drift, but I am sure you have heard of crust displacement. Charles Hapgood put forward the hypothesis of crust displacement. He received his master's degree from Harvard University in 1929. He worked at the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, during World War II. The OSS later became the CIA. In 1953, he published his book, Earth's Shifting Crust, a key to some basic problems of Earth's science. He wrote this book through studying the Piri Reis map. Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis compiled the map in 1513. The map is world famous because of its precise representation of the Antarctic coastline before the ice. Hapgood concluded that the entire Earth's crust shifts significantly at regular intervals. Specifically, every 41,000 years, the poles shift in position by as much as 40 degrees. The Piri Reis map proves that in ancient times, the South Pole may not have been in its present position. The Antarctic was also warm and vegetated at that time. Albert Einstein agreed with the theory of crustal displacement. Einstein even wrote a foreword for Hapgood's book. Hapgood's theory still did not gain a place in mainstream science, even though no one could prove him wrong. Chan Thomas's view in the Adam and Eve story are arguably very close to Hapgood, but the science he depicts is more earth-shattering. Thomas describes a major 90-degree shift of the Earth's crust, where the North and South poles would move directly to the position of the equator. Such a dramatic change in the position of the Earth's crust occurs in a very short span of 6 to 12 hours, rather than over hundreds or thousands of years. Within this short period of time, the crust of the Earth can shift in one piece like the loose skin of an orange. But the atmosphere and oceans don't move with the crust. They'll still rotate with the rotation of the Earth from west to east, at a speed of more than 1,000 miles per hour. This causes the wind and waves to move at supersonic speed and inundate the continents. Disaster follows. Crustal displacements occur because the geomagnetic poles do not coincide exactly with the geographical north and south poles, and there's a certain magnetic declination. The current scientific community generally believes that the Earth's magnetic field will undergo a 180-degree reversal of the geomagnetic north and south poles every million years or so. Thomas believes that when the stable electromagnetic structure of the Earth's core is destroyed, a geomagnetic inversion occurs. A tremendous amount of energy will erupt within the core. At the same time, a powerful energy will erupt inside the crust. This force will directly affect the Earth's asthenosphere, making highly viscous substances. Now it becomes more fluid, causing the originally fixed crust on the asthenosphere to slide rapidly towards the equator due to the weight of the polar glaciers. Now the landslide and flooding would continue for 6 days, just like the story of God's creation of humanity in the Bible's book of Genesis. As the story goes, before the creation of the world, the heavens and the earth were in chaos. There were no continents at that time. The planet was covered with seawater. God created the world in 6 days. On the 7th day, the sea returned to calm and land was revealed. We've all heard the story. Now, Thomas believes the Bible is actually a historic book. Only a small group of people survived the catastrophe, and they went back to a prehistoric Stone Age overnight. Each day was a struggle for survival, and there was no time or technology to keep detailed records of what had happened. In this way, history became myth by word of mouth. Thomas also says that disasters caused by such crustal drift occur about every 5,000 to 7,500 years. The last one occurred about 6,500 years ago, corresponding to the period of Noah's Ark. The second last occurred 11,500 years ago, the time of Adam and Eve in the Bible. Speaking of which, many people may feel that Thomas just had a wild imagination. But why did the CIA decide this book was worth censoring? Could it mean that there was some validity to the proposed theories? Now for me, when things are censored, there's probably truth to it. Thomas concluded that the last disaster happened 6,500 years ago. At the time, the earliest human civilization known as Sumer disappeared from the earth. Now, Thomas claims that Noah was actually a Sumerian, and that his name in the Epic of Gilgamesh is Utnapishtim. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero Utnapishtim, with the assistance of Ea, the god of water, made a giant ark with his family and friends. When the flood came, he brought animals and grains on the ship. The ship eventually docked on a mountain. Utnapishtim continuously sent out birds to see if the flood had faded. This is virtually identical to the biblical story of Noah's Ark. Thomas said the second last catastrophe happened 11,500 years ago, corresponding to the period of the Younger Dryas. At that time, the Earth's temperature suddenly dropped. North American mammoths and saber-toothed tigers became extinct almost overnight. In recent years, scientists have dug up the remains of frozen mammoths, one after another, in the permafrost of Siberia near the Arctic Circle. Some of the mammoth flesh was so well preserved that it looked as if they had just died, with plenty of undigested food in their mouths and stomachs. Those big guys, being 3 meters tall and weighing 6 tons, most likely suffered a sudden ice age while eating and were rapidly frozen. So it seems that Thomas's claim of a sudden climate change of 6 to 12 hours isn't so unrealistic. Thomas also casually mentioned in the book that there are striking similarities in the myths around the world. For example, there are similar statements in myths from all countries that the world was born in chaos. Similar to the biblical descriptions, in Greek mythology, the universe also began as chaos. Gaia, the mother goddess of Earth, was born out of the chaos. She gave birth to all of the world's creatures. The same is true in Norse mythology, where Ginnungagap, or Gaping Abyss, was born out of chaos. Ymir, the ancestor of all other giants, was born out of the abyss. Chinese mythology also says that the world originated in chaos, like inside of an egg. It wasn't until the god named Pangu was born and split the chaos with an axe that the original world came into being. According to Thomas, the state of chaos described in mythology is actually a state of darkness when disaster occurs. The sea gets mixed with mud and sand, and the storm blows away the vegetation. Sumerian god Ninurta, Greek god Poseidon, and Hindu god Shiva all use the trident as a weapon. Also, the flood myth motive occurs in many cultures. Maybe the similarities shared by the myths in different cultures are not just mere coincidences. Maybe in a more ancient time, a common event brought about the connection between these myths. Could myths really be different retellings of the same history by people living all over the world? Harlan Bretz was a famous American geologist. Scientists criticized him for almost half a century for claiming that the Great Flood was a real event. Through years of field work on the extraordinary landscapes of the Columbia Plateau, Bretz began publishing a series of papers in 1923. He argued that a sudden and catastrophic flood was the cause of the unusual landscapes of the Columbia Plateau. This plateau has a huge dry canyon, big round holes, several cliffs that had once clearly been waterfalls. Bretz believed that slow erosion couldn't have caused these strange landforms. He concluded that a sudden catastrophic flood created the scablands. Brett's view became a heretical idea in the eyes of other geologists. They thought of his hypothesis as outrageous, with elements that suggested the biblical story of Noah. In an era without GPS, aerial photography, high-tech measuring devices, and computer simulations, Brett's idea sparked more than 4 decades of scientific controversy. The final confirmation came from satellite images taken in 1974. It wasn't until 1979, when Bretz was 97 years old, that the Geological Society of America awarded him the Penrose Medal, the symbol of the highest honor. The New York Times reported, while his proposal was long controversial, a photograph made from an Earth satellite some 570 miles overhead has now provided clear evidence for the scope and nature of this prehistoric catastrophe. If a great flood did occur in prehistory, then was Noah's Ark also real? The Bible says in Genesis that the final location of Noah's Ark was Mount Ararat. Mount Ararat is the highest peak in Turkey, more than 5,000 meters above sea level. Over the years, a number of explorers have come to Mount Ararat to try to find traces of Noah's Ark. Now, in 1959, when Turkey's army captain Landur Pinar was looking at aerial photographs of his country, he found an unusual ship-shaped terrain on a mountain. At the time, many people exclaimed that this was Noah's Ark. Today, the place got named Dur Pinar site, or in other words, Ararat anomaly. Now, in 1977, American amateur archaeologist Ron Wyatt conducted a field study of Dur Pinar site. He found that the terrain was 157 meters in length, which is an exact match to the dimensions of Noah's Ark as recorded in the Bible. In late 2019, computer engineer and archaeologist Andrew Jones and geophysicist John Larson modeled the formation of the Dur Pinar site in 3D. They used the latest 3D imaging technology to send electrical signals to the underground through cables to scan the underground part of the Dur Pinar site. Presenting a real underground photo of this site, it is found that what's beneath the earth is really a ship. The line between history and mythology will be even more blurred if this is ever confirmed that the Dur Pinar site is indeed the wreckage of Noah's Ark. Finally, in the Adam and Eve story, Chan Thomas predicts that the next catastrophe brought about by the crust drift will occur between 50 and 200 years from 1966. That is, between 2016 and 2166. I wonder if this is the reason why the CIA decided to ban this book. At the end of the book, Thomas expresses his views on catastrophes, saying that cyclic cataclysm removes perhaps only the species that are harmful to the planet. Today, human activity has had an irreversible impact on ecology, with the degradation and even extinction of forest and grassland vegetation. Biodiversity is declining and soil erosion is severe. All these raise alarms for human beings. The rapid development of society has increasingly highlighted the evil side of human nature. Greed and desire have filled this money-oriented, materialistic society. From a certain point of view, it is the cataclysm that gives mankind a chance to start over again. In the end, Thomas wrote, "A little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing, or it can be a vibrant seed giving rise to verdant forests and awakening sleeping giants." I wonder what everyone thinks about Thomas's book and our view on this topic. Anything else you'd like us to dive into? Feel free to leave your comments below, and we'll see you next time.